Hello everyone. Today we are going to work to understand these elements of visual literacy. It's really important that we understand the visual literacy elements so that we can read multiple forms of media. Today I want to walk you through how to identify these 4 key elements in any type of media you interact with. Now, because we're examining the Constitutional Convention, I felt it was important that we examine a painting that reflects that time period. Now, to do that, we're going to look and use these visual literacy elements. So when we're looking at any sort of painting or any sort of media that's very visual, we want to make sure that we can apply these elements. So the first one is rule of thirds. Rule of thirds basically asks us to break up a piece of media into thirds, okay? So to do that, you basically you can do this on your Pear Deck slide. I'm just going to break this up into thirds. Maybe. Here we go. You just take your image and you basically, like I just said, splice it into thirds. Okay, now the reason that this is really important is that artists, when they're constructing their work, they will break it into thirds so that we can understand how to frame and focus the work. Sorry, technical difficulties here. Okay, here's my next line. And finally, the last line. So as you can see in the rule of thirds, the goal that any artist has or any creator of media has when working with the rule of thirds is to lay out in a grid pattern a means of accessing the photo or the media. It's really useful because it helps center our attention and helps us understand as the consumer what's the focus that the author has in mind. Now, the next piece I want to show you is this idea of negative space. Every piece of media that is some sort of print usually has negative space. Now I'm going to do some circling here where I identify areas of negative space. So right here is an area of negative space. You can see right underneath the gentleman who happens to be Benjamin Franklin that the author chose to use negative space as a means of helping our eye and dragging our eye up to Benjamin Franklin right here. There's another example of negative space in this painting, and it's right here. Right below where George Washington and the other founding fathers are signing the Constitution, we see that the author wants our eye to be directed to George Washington and those signing the Constitution so that we recognize the significance of this moment. So we have 2 key elements right here of negative space. I think another area where we see negative space is also right here. The author used negative space as a way to draw our attention away from draw our attention to this center point right here of kind of like an angel or something portraying the signing of the Constitution. Now, the third element that we're going to discuss is empathy. Empathy is our ability to feel and connect to what the author is presenting. Now, in this photo, we see lots going on, and the author's intention and the point of empathy is really helping us to empathize with the idea that this is a very significant moment in United States history. The author is also wanting us to recognize that there is a lot of energy and emotion happening in the painting, and that's another means of conveying empathy. Finally, the author's purpose and message. It's really important that we make an interpretation of what we think the author's purpose and message is. So as I examine this painting and I look wholeheartedly at the whole thing, I see that the top is really very angelic. It's really a means of the author really trying to show maybe a new dawn or birth of a new nation. Whereas here, the author's purpose might be to show all the people who were part of that and how their ideas and how the energy in the room really sought to convey how we were able to create our Constitution. Author's purpose and meaning and message is really about us making meaning from the work. It's not necessarily going to Google and reading what did the author intend. It's really us as the consumer making meaning of the work. So we're going to practice that in the next slide that follows.